The president knew exactly where he is. He has the experience of going to Sandy Hook, which clearly was a event in his life that he will never forget. And it left a mark on him. He called it the worst day of his presidency. Listen to this.
Yeah, I was too, actually. I visited Newtown 2 days after what happened, so it was still very raw. It's the only time I've ever seen Secret Service cry on duty. It continues to haunt me. It was one of the worst days of my presidency.
Joining us now from California, Congresswoman Jackie Speier. Congresswoman, good to have you with us.
Great to be with you, Ed.
Your thoughts on the town hall last night, as you step away from it, what the president did, what his mission was, how it was produced, and the exchanges. What do you think?
Well, there's no question that he is absolutely committed to this issue, is passionate about it, and isn't going to shrink from those who want to criticize him. And I applaud him, and I think the American people are applauding him as well.
Do you think it'll move anybody in Congress, or is the gun lobby so strong it's not going to move anybody?
It's not going to move anyone in Congress.
See, that's really the story, and that's why the president is where he is.
Right. No, this is the most dysfunctional Congress in the history of this country. It's reflected in the polls. That's why there is so much anger out there. And frankly, the members here just don't get it. We've got to come together and work together. And the fact that you can't pass a bill that is just going to keep the status quo in place, it's just going to accommodate the fact that new technologies, the internet, and different ways of selling guns have come into being. But we still want background checks to make sure that ex-cons and persons that are convicted of misdemeanor domestic violence don't get guns. So why would we want to create an avenue for them to escape what we already have as the law in the country?
Closing the gun show loophole, how much of an effect do you think that's going to have?
There's more guns, I think, that are sold on the internet than are sold at gun shows. In California, we have every imaginable law in the book, and yet there were AK-47s that terrorists in San Bernardino were able to get.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't appreciate the fact that this has to be a national policy, and that even in California, where you have the strictest gun laws in the country, or among the strictest, it had a year in which there were more guns purchased than ever before. So it's not like anyone isn't able to access guns. We want people who are legally eligible to access guns to be able to access guns. This is making sure those that shouldn't get guns don't get guns.
Astronaut Kelly made a profound point about the number of firearms in the number of households in this country last night. 350 million guns, 65 million households. That's a number that we don't hear too much about. And then he asked the question about how would the government go about confiscating that? Is it even possible? And I think we all know the answer to that. The president made the point that it's the gun manufacturers are behind all of this, and it's big business for firearms, and this is where a lot of the lobbying money comes from. And I'd like to know what, from your position in Congress, how do they operate? How does the gun lobby operate? What do they do? What do they say? How do they function in the halls of Congress?
Well, first of all, Ed, I should admit to you that I have an F rating with the NRA. So
I know that.
They don't come according.
You wear that as a badge of honor, as many people do.
But I think people in Congress are somewhat reflective of the population. They operate in fear. Most of these members operate in fear that there's going to be someone more conservative than them that will run against them, or that the NRA will come up against them with another candidate. So I don't know to what extent the NRA feels that they've got to come around with an arm and twist anyone. I think that they just recognize the power that the gun lobby has in terms of disseminating its lies. Truly, there is no way that you're going to confiscate these guns.
And
There's
finally,
no way anyone wants to confiscate these guns.
No, that's not the mission. And finally, was the president effective? Do you think he moved some Americans last night?
I think the more he speaks about it, the more it becomes a drumbeat, the more likely we'll get some action.
Jackie
the
Speier.
Tea Party gained the kind of clout it did by just continuing to pound on the issue, keep the drumbeat. And I think the president has to do that. I have to do it. I've done many gun buybacks in my district. I've done conferences on After Newtown, and we've done a whole program in my area on making sure kids in schools that have issues are identified and they get the support they need so that we don't have Newtown incidents in our community. So there's lots of things we can do and we must do.
Listen to Donald Trump. This, of course, anything the president does ends up on the campaign trail, and they all react to what they would do. Here's Trump.
You know what a gun-free zone is to a sicko? That's bait. That's like gun-free zone. I will get rid of gun-free zones on schools, and you have to. And on military bases, my first day, it gets signed, okay?
What do you think of that? End gun-free zones at schools. That would be, there would be firearms at elementary schools in America.
So this is how chilling that comment is to me. Imagine having, toddlers and first graders walking around with guns. I mean, how outrageous can we get on this issue to lose any sense of sanity and common sense? I mean, it's absolutely absurd, and it will. I think if people sit back and think about it, they recognize that doesn't make sense. And when you realize that 40% of the guns in this country are purchased without background checks, that should make all of us nervous.
Congresswoman Jackie Speier, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Congresswoman Jackie Speier from California. She's got an F rating with the NRA. That's what it sounds like. I like it.